Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan. Let me ask you, do you enjoy some juicy drama every now and then? I feel like I am not a very dramatic person, but if there's some juicy story going down, I might watch from the sidelines with a little bit of intrigue, put my ear to the wall. You know what I mean? I think all of us, every now and then, we love a little drama in a good story. Well, the whiskeys I'm going to be trying today come from so they're not a non-distiller producer, right? An NDP called St. Cloud. And so what they do is they source whiskey, undisclosed from whom they source, undisclosed mash bill, but we know the ages, the proofs, stuff like that. But so St. Cloud is like, if you ever go to their website, it's going to jump out to you immediately what their whole vibe is. It's like, we want to go for this luxury appeal. We want you to feel like you're a part of something fancy and exclusive when you buy a St. Cloud bottle. And their bottling is gorgeous. Their branding is beautiful. They have a very artistic approach to their product, to their marketing, to their website, all of it. So they want you to feel like you're part of something illustrious. And so these bottles are not super cheap. In fact, the ones that we're going to be covering today are, the MSRP is anywhere between like $150 and $170, depending on which bottle you're getting, and then secondary prices are much greater than that. So, St. Cloud, what's the drama, what's the juice? Well, let me get these things poured, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Sound good? Let's do it. All right, those are poured. Let's let them open up. First and foremost, let me just talk a little bit about what we're tasting today. So I've got the St. Cloud 7-year and the St. Cloud 8-year, two different bottles, two different ages. And here's what we know about them. So the 7-year, $120 to $150 MSRP, 122 proof. We do not know the mash bill, but it is, obviously it's at barrel strength. And then the 8-year, again, it's a single barrel proof. We're looking at 124.78 on the proof, $160 MSRP, 8 years old. Now, what I do know is I checked into some of the reviews on these things. I just looked at scores and like the final wrap-ups. I didn't want to look at like tasting notes, nosing notes. I try to avoid those things before I taste something because I don't like when somebody else's experience sort of, I guess, gives me a new lens to look at the whiskey through. I want to try it for the first time without any expectations when I try whiskeys for the most part. So I avoided all the like nosing, palate, all that stuff. I just go to the final write-up. And what I have seen is that a lot of really reputable and well-known reviewers and tasters and whiskey writers actually really like these. The only thing I've seen them talk about is, price point. You're paying a little bit of a premium. I think $150 for a 7-year product is a pretty steep ask, but you're also paying for things like, single barrel proof, branding, the whole bottling design, which is quite appealing. But they almost all unanimously agree that both of these bottles taste really good, and it's really good whiskey. So I am excited to try it, but here's where we get into a little bit of the drama. So the guy that is sort of heading this up, this is his project. Ray Walker is his name. This is not his first time being an entrepreneur and a businessman. He has had history with things like BMW parts. He's had a history with a whole saga where he decided he wanted to be a wine producer. So again, it's just like a single man operation, but he wanted to like move to Burgundy and get into the wine business. So he's like sourcing from growers and, getting stuff into bottles. It's a whole process, right? It's not easy, but apparently some stuff went down. And eventually it got to the point where like the initial wines were decent. And so people would pay in advance, like a year in advance for the next harvest. They're like, I want to get the bottle for 2014. So in 2013, I'm going to pay up front for, a case of these or whatever. Well, when time came for these to be delivered the following year, people started getting on the forums. And they're like, hey, like I haven't gotten mine yet. I don't even have like a shipping notice that anything's shipped yet. You guys have the same? Yeah, same thing for me. And so a lot of people were circulating the same story. Like, well, I'm not seeing any bottles this year, and no one was. And then it kind of all hit the fan. So you had a lot of wine writers who were basically sharing their experiences with this man about how he really liked to control the narrative. He'd try to shut them down. He started to block out reviewers because he didn't want them tasting his stuff and writing reviews about it. Even if it was like favorable, he would reach out and be like, I don't like the tasting note you used. And he kind of came off as a control freak. And so everybody started sharing their stories about this guy. And then stuff got even worse. Well, it turned out these bottles weren't being delivered because they had been confiscated. Legally confiscated because he had not been paying people like rent and all that kind of stuff. Customs, French Customs, had acquired a lot of his stock as well and held it as collateral. And now those barrels, I don't know what ended up happening to them, but for years they were just sitting in somebody's, like a hotel cellar or something. So this is a really interesting story. Obviously, he ended up bailing out of France, coming back to the States, and a whole lot of legal trouble with that whole thing. But it didn't paint him in a very good light. And then stuff came out about shady operations with the BMW parts he'd been, buying and trading and selling. And then stuff came out about domestic violence, stuff where he had allegedly, not allegedly, I think this is actually, I don't want to say for a fact, but it looked like this was a done deal, that he had assaulted his own wife after she had opened and tasted from an expensive bottle that he had wanted to remain closed. So this guy's story is not great, right? But then he comes back to America, starts this whole project with St. Cloud, sourcing whiskey and selling it online and having this whole fancy, luxurious brand. And all of the reviews are looking really positive. So that's who it is. That's where he comes from. And so a lot of people then, you have to sort of make a morality call, and we all draw our lines somewhere, right? We all draw our lines somewhere, so I try not to judge people too harshly. Because sometimes someone will be like, I'm never going to buy a whiskey from a guy that beats his wife. But at the same time, they're wearing shoes that were made in a sweatshop. You know what I mean? It's like, we all have to draw our lines somewhere, and where you do is up to you, right? But that's what we know about where this guy's come from, where he is now, and what he's doing now. And also at the same time, you got to understand, if you cut him out and say, I'm not going to buy this product because I'm going to be supporting him, at the same time, do you want to boycott the people that actually make this juice, that are being employed to distill this and age this? I don't know. I really don't know. That's up to you. So you got to make that call. But here we go. St. Cloud. This is the 7-year. We'll start with this one. I'll at least tell you what I think of this whiskey. Hey, big shout out to Delicious Dairy for sending these in to me. I appreciate you. Nose has a nice baking spice to it. It smells very Kentucky whiskey, very Kentucky bourbon. I almost get a custard note, kind of creamy, sweet. But I also get, on the other side of that, I get the creamy and the sweet, but I also get a lot of this baking spice, the cinnamons, the nutmegs. Almost makes me think of coffee cake, which I love a good coffee cake. A little streusel on top, almost like a holiday vibe on the nose. And definitely getting sort of like a graham cracker note as well. It's a nice nose. Let's try it. Cheers. And that's got some zip to it. Cinnamon and honey. Definitely that graham cracker note coming through very strong on the palate. It's interesting. I really love spicy margaritas. And that's my favorite way to have a marg, is a good spicy marg. I love when you get the combination of the tart and the sweet with the hot and the spicy. And this kind of reminds me of that same kind of a vibe, where I almost get sort of like a cayenne, kind of a peppery note on this as well. But definitely getting the sweet notes too, like the honey, the cinnamon, the graham cracker, and then a little bit of that spice coming in with that cayenne. And then the finish, lots of peppery oak and a little bit of vanilla. Yeah, all in all, that's really tasty stuff. If I was to criticize anything at all, I would say that I want a little bit more base. We got the brights, we got the honey, the graham, and the pepperiness. But I want some base sweetness too, like your molasses and your caramels, something to kind of hold it all up. But otherwise, that is actually pretty good stuff. I like that. Let's try the 8-year. So again, this is 8 years old, 124.78 proof, single barrel proof. Don't know who it's sourced from. The nose of this one is similar to the last, but there's something I'm getting here that I wasn't getting on the 7-year, and that is some more of like the rye influence. It's more fruity than the last one, but it's not like your red fruits. It's more like, I'm thinking like melon, like muskmelon on the nose, alongside the cinnamon and some sweet brown sugary oak. I like that. Let's try it. Cheers. Yeah, so it's definitely a little bit spicier. Not that cayenne spice. More like your peppery spice. Like peppercorn spice, I mean. Yeah, a little bit of white peppercorn. That muskmelon note is there on the palate, but it's really short-lived. And then I get into a lot more of the barrel funky notes, like a good warehouse funk on the tail end of the palate and then into the finish. Yeah, a little bit of sweet, creamy vanilla up front. That short-lived muskmelon note. And after that, it's all like the peppercorn and oaks. And a lot of barrel funk on that finish. Whole lot of barrel funk. Interesting stuff. I think overall, I liked the 7-year better than the 8. So if I was going to give these a score based on my scale, I got to take into account all factors, all variables here. Price point, presentation, age, taste, proof, all that stuff. So one of the things that I don't ever want to be is like a whiskey tater. And if you don't know what that word means, normally it's sort of like an insult for somebody who just chases things because maybe they're rare, or they just chase things just because they're hyped up. You know what I mean? They're willing to spend extra money on something just because they don't want to miss out. You know what I mean? And then there's me. I try to just be the kind of guy that's going to go out there and buy a whiskey that I know that I'm going to enjoy. I buy it because I'm interested in how it tastes, not just the illustriousness of it and the luxuriousness of it. And I don't want to fall into that kind of a trap with a product like St. Cloud. So while this is beautifully presented and it has that luxurious sort of a feel to it, this artsy-fartsy kind of a vibe to it, I do really just want to focus on predominantly, how does it taste? Is it good whiskey? So I'm going to consider mainly the sip itself and the price point. While the bottle is definitely going to give it some points because it is pretty cool and I'm sure it presents well on a shelf. But the first one we had, the 7-year, I think I would probably give that somewhere around, I want to say a 7.2. 7.2. I was not disappointed in that sip. I thought it was really, really good. The only things is, availability and price. It's not cheap. Anytime you're spending over $100 for a single bottle, you want it to deliver something special. And I think that the juice itself was really good. And so I don't have any qualms with what I tasted, but I may want a little bit more of those base notes just to elevate that sip even a little bit more, and then I would rate it even higher than that. But 7.2 is not a bad score at all for me. That's actually pretty good. The 8-year, I think I would give a 6.7 because I'm getting more age and I'm spending more money than the 7-year, but I feel like I'm getting less diverse flavor profiles from it. And I think that the 7, even though I wanted some more base notes from it, it did present as a more complete package. While the 8-year a little bit, it felt like it had a little bit of a crisis of identity. It's like, do I want to be a spicy and fruity rye, or do I want to have the sweet notes from the bourbon? It kind of just tried to toe the line between and didn't have a strong core sense of identity from that sip. And while I do like a lot of the barrel funk notes that you get on well-aged products, well-aged Kentucky bourbons, I prefer when they're accompanied with things like lots of vanillas and brown sugars. And this just gave me a ton of funk without those sweet notes I'm used to getting alongside it. So that's what I think of St. Cloud, at least the juice itself. But I really want to know, is this the kind of thing that you think maybe you would dive into, you would try, pay for a pour of it, maybe buy a bottle of it if you really like the juice? Or does the story sort of tarnish the juice for you? Where do you draw your lines? Hey, let me know in the comment section below. Cheers. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and watching the video today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If this isn't the first time you stopped by the channel, maybe it's the second or the third time, but you haven't subscribed yet, maybe think about doing that. We'd love to see you around here more. Take your shoes off, kick them off, and stay a while, you know what I'm saying? And a big shout out to my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for helping fund the bottles that we get to pick up and review here on the channel. Cheers, my friends. May you live richly and get better with age. And I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.